Tak, dobrý den. Vítáme vás u dalšího dílu našeho podcastu 1035. Moderuju já a Tomáš Širsa, znáte mě z podcastu Insider a můj kolega Honza Kofroň.
Ahoj všem a dneska budeme mít speciálního hosta, doslova.
Hodně speciálního z blízkovýchodní dálky doslova. Proto jsme na takovém improvizovaném callu a nahrávání. Vidíte naše studio za mnou v pozadí, ale příští díly už budou fyzicky. Takže pozvali jsme si Dorona Avitala, což je legenda izraelské armády, velitel 202. batalionu v libanonské válce, velitel speciální jednotky Sayeret Matkal, nejelitnější jednotky izraelské armády mezi lety 92 a 94 a taky legenda izraelské politiky. Vstoupil do hnutí Kadima, za něž působil v Knesetu, které založil Ariel Sharon. Honzo, chceš ještě něco dodat?
Taková možná perlička. Doron také má doktorát mimo jiné z Kolumbijské univerzity, což je poměrně zajímavá záležitost. Doron, we have just introduced you. We told many great things about your military career, about your scholar career, and about your political career.
Have you understood anything?
Yeah, I understood a few.
And we basically said that the first half of your professional career was connected with the military. So maybe I will ask you what led you to choose this path or career path as a young man, because obviously there was a obligatory military service in Israel when you were young, and it's still today, but you eventually decided to stay in the army. So what you led to this career path?
Well, it's an interesting process. First of all, Israel is a little bit different than other armies because everybody has to go to the army, and then some of the finest kids continue to stay in the army, and we keep this talent in. So in the beginning, I didn't plan on a military career. I started in the paratroopers. There was the times where Lebanon, from 78 to 82, times in which Israel operated in Lebanon against the PLO back then, and then there was the Lebanon War of 82, and I was a company commander. And it was harsh but interesting times. And in the end, we succeeded to throw the PLO all the way to Tunisia. I mean, we conquered Lebanon all the way to Beirut, and then supervised the PLO when they left to Tunisia. This was an interesting moment. After which I had many offers to stay in the army, but I did decide to leave the army for 3 years and went to study mathematics and computer science. But the army kept asking me to come back. And in the end, I was intrigued by Sayeret Matkal and came back for 10 years in Sayeret Matkal. Sayeret Matkal is different than the paratroopers because it's more of an intelligence unit, and you do those very refined, well-planned, years or months in ahead intelligence. Special forces, secretive plans. So it was very interesting, and I was 10 years there, and I was 2 years a commander. I mean, this is the time when you... the time of command in the unit. This was 92, 94. Exciting times, not easy time. It was under Yitzhak Rabin. He was the prime minister. He was assassinated a year later after I completed. And as a young commander, I took the command at the age of 33 to be able to present plans to the prime minister and to get authorization and to succeed. The last operation I did under Rabin was an important operation connected to the hostage dilemma that we have, because we had this pilot, Ron Arad, that fell over Lebanon and was taken by a guy by the name of Mustafa Dirani, that was a leader of Hezbollah later on. And we didn't have any clue about Ron Arad. We lost tracks on him. And in 94, under the command of Rabin, we actually went to the Baqa, the Lebanese Baqa, where Hezbollah now has a very stronghold there. It was there. Back then, he was holding the Baqa together with the Syrian army, and we succeeded to kidnap Mustafa Dirani and bring him home, and get the intelligence. We knew he was in his hands, but we lost track of Ron Arad. We don't want the same thing to happen to us with the hostage dilemma. And Ron Arad, the pilot that we lost, became a symbol to the idea that Israel doesn't want to lose its hostages right now.
It's amazing because my next question is maybe related to my reading, because I read the book, The Letters of Yoni Netanyahu, who was the previous commander of the unit. And I was intrigued how it's connected when people choose their academic careers, basically. He studied as well in the United States, as I remember. Exactly. And it's combined with this, I would say, ruthless, high-ranking military activity. So how does this combine? Because it's, seen from the Czech Republic, it's highly unusual.
It's interesting when I discuss this thing with students, I all the time remind them that if you go back to history, it's not that the connection between the military and philosophy, for example. We shouldn't forget that Aristotle was the teacher of Alexander the Great. So the greatest philosopher, the teacher of the greatest general. And you can find, René Descartes was both a military man and a great philosopher. Wittgenstein, a philosopher that I like, the Austrian philosopher of 20th century, served in World War I and was decorated. So in times of need, it's connected. You can find this. And in Israel, also the army was very careful now to offer officers this idea to study and serve. And this optional way of living, that you study a year and serve. For example, when I was in the unit, my second degree, I would start a semester. Then they will call me to do some project. So in the first few months of the project, I would go 2 days to the university, 3 days to the army. But then in the last few months, I would have to leave the semester. I have many courses that I didn't finish because I would go to the project. And it was a way to combine those two things. I think it gives a lot of advantage to the Israeli army, this kind of way of this combination.
If you can elaborate upon this, where do you think is the biggest value added of this, let's say, push to especially officers to get some advanced degrees?
Okay. I think it has to do with the logic of things, because the logic, for example, one thing that I explored in philosophy was what is the status of a rule, a standard, an instruction, okay? And people think that instruction you can follow blindly. People tell me, go straight or do this. But then we always said that the rule is an open-ended command. For example, I'll give you a good example. Suppose I say to myself, I plan an operation, a secretive operation. I have to calculate the times very meticulously. And then, for example, I say, if in this junction, in this enemy, behind enemy lines, if at 4, I'm not there by 4, I have to come back. Okay, I don't do the mission. Then it's 4 and 1 minute and I'm there. So the question, I do comply with the old rule. Well, you say, but I'm already here. I'm invested resources. So I do a rethinking and then I decide whether I continue. So for me, it was very important, for example, this kind of logic, because I was studying this guy, Ludwig Wittgenstein, whose main thing was, how do you follow a rule? So, for example, our operational book in the unit started with this line, which is a philosophical maxim that says, every criteria, every standard is only but a point of reference. It's only the beginning. It helps you to evaluate your situation, but it doesn't bind you to do X or Y. And so this kind of logic, when you introduce it to the world of secretive operation or the battlefield, is very important. It's a connection between planning and execution. And it's an interesting philosophical, if you want, subject to explore.
Does this give the Israeli army, which is known for high levels of operational flexibility, this extra push that allows for extreme operations like, for example, Entebbe, or as we saw, Operation Arnon, which are wonders of operational standards?
Yeah, I think it does. Because it allows you to evaluate what we call the different trade-offs. The most important thing about the battlefield is the idea of a trade-off. For example, you wear a vest, you are protected, okay? But it does limit you in terms of your reaction because it can bind you. So every decision that you make, you evaluate the trade-offs between what you get, say some security, what you lose, okay? So I think when you have this kind of logic and you understand that there are so many trade-offs, okay? For example, you mentioned the Arnon operation. So as they were fleeing the area, one of the vehicles got hit. So the vehicle couldn't move. So this is eventuality that you have to to work out all the eventualities and the trade-off between them. So I think this kind, if you get these elements into planning, how to follow the rules, how to follow the instruction, how to make it possible that they're open-ended, and then evaluate the trade-offs, then you can be better. I can give you another very nice example. You mentioned the Arnon operation. So it turns out there was a lot of intelligence before. So in the weeks before, they actually had intelligence about the places where the hostages were located, okay? So what you can do in those 3 weeks, you can create a mock-up of those houses, okay? But we were always careful to say, don't think about the mock-up, the model of what you're going to do. Don't think that it will be like a sort of a one-to-one. Why? Because if you fix your eye on a mock-up, which is perfectly one-to-one with what is in the reality, and then there's some change in reality, then you might not be able to address the change in reality. Suppose somebody added a staircase, somebody added a lock. So you have to think very open-ended in terms of the connection between the planning and the operation. This is key and very important. And you have to create also a multiplicity of possibilities. For example, in the operation where we kidnapped Mustafa Dirani, nobody had known in advance who would be the force that would get first to Mustafa Dirani, because we created a lot of venues. And one of the forces were lucky enough that his venue was the easiest path. They reached Mustafa Dirani, was reaching to his gun. It was too late. He felt the gun to his head, and then we could have taken him to Israel. So the same thing with this Arnon operation and all those kind of operations.
Thank you. If we can back just for a very brief moment to your or the moment when you served with Sayeret Matkal, how hard actually it is to get to this very elite and quite widely known unit?
It's the hardest. When I was a young high school student and I wanted to go to Sayeret Matkal, it was still secretive. There was no way to knock on the door and say, I want to apply. Nobody knew about it. The name was not recognized. We knew because I was navigating in this group in the desert on top of the Dead Sea, that these people that are associated with the instructors are associated with the unit. And then one day they approached the school. They come to say, we can't tell you anything, but you can file your name. So I said, why not? I will find my name. And then for my disappointment, I didn't get an invitation because it turns out that I had some stupid heart condition, which is not, it doesn't get your profile, but it's a sort of, back then it was a sort of, you wouldn't go through this criteria. So, but after I was this celebrated commander, the paratroopers, they brought me back. So the training, so this is to be accepted, first of all, is very easy. Then the training stage. And then a very important series that really can break the spirit of many people. It's called a captivity experience. And this I did as a young officer. It was harder because I was with my soldiers. They capture you and they do a simulation of falling into captivity, where you have to stick to your cover story, not disclose what's your real mission. And for a few days, you don't know the time, of course, because no sense of time. And you go through beating, interrogation. It's really a sort of also it's a physical thing, but also a very mental thing. How to stand up to this interrogation, because those experts, they know really how to break your mentality, and some people are breaking up, and then people that break up cannot be fully professional soldiers. Even most of the training they already had done. So it's a tough path to be operational soldier or operational warrior in the unit, to be accepted and then to complete the whole training phase.
So maybe going back to the Operation Arnon, could you walk us through how such thing is secretly prepared? What kind of planning does it take? How many people are involved regarding information safety?
Exactly.
How does this come to light?
So first of all, it starts with intelligence. And this is, by the way, what on the advantage of my unit, Sayeret Matkal, because we are under the intelligence corps. We are under the intelligence commander. So we have very intimate connection with the intelligence. Here, this was the anti-terror unit of the police, which became a very strong And within the territory of Israel, they even have some priority over Sayeret Matkal. If the operation was taking place in Lebanon, Sayeret Matkal would do it. If it was in Iraq, Sayeret Matkal. If it was in Entebbe, Sayeret Matkal. But since this is Gaza, which is in proximity to Israel, we can send the Yamam, the anti-terror. Yep. But still, you need to have the intelligence. So there's a very meticulous gathering of intelligence. Basically, there's a headquarter headed by also ex of Sayeret Matkal, a very fine general, a soldier of mine, Itzan Alon, who's responsible for collecting every piece of knowledge of each of the hostages. So there's a database, each hostage, they track the path, when was he last seen, where is he, whatever. And then there's a breakthrough. The breakthrough can be in the field. Some Hamas operative that get caught, interrogated in the field or interrogated in Israel. And then you gather the picture. And it turns out that for 3 weeks we had the picture. We had a picture where the two locations. Then now you have the location. So now you have to work out the intelligence on the location. It can be from any kind of means. In the context, for example, when I was talking about Mustafa Dirani, you can send to Lebanon a Mossad agent to go and take some pictures from the road of the house. So I'm not clear, and of course we don't disclose what kind of prior active information gathering operation were preparing the operation itself after we knew that they are there. Then there's the issue of the indication, because when you go to the operation, you should know that in the moment you go there, the target is there, because somebody might have moved them. You don't want to go and find an empty house. So the indication is also important, and the indication can postpone the operation. Okay. Again, in the Irani, first day we didn't operate, we were not sure about the indication. So you have to have the indication clear. Then when you have all this setup, you look for the windows of opportunity. The windows of opportunity can be things like weather, things like presence of forces, enemy forces in the area unexpectedly. So also towards the date that you set, you have to think whether you have a window of opportunity and what are the conditions that allow you to operate. You list a condition under which you think you can operate. By the way, all this requires a prior authorization by the Prime Minister. I mean, this is an operation in the level which the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister, the plans are presented before them and they say, go ahead. The Prime Minister can say, go ahead under those and those conditions and let me know whether the condition is satisfied, and then you get the final go ahead. Then there are like 3 stages in this operation. The first stage is to get into the destination. This is a secretive operation. Nobody should notice that you get there. It would be undercover usually. Here the undercover were Islamic undercover, some trucks, whatever they've been used. In the case of the Arnon operation, you had 2 locations. So the forces that get to the location should arrive secretively, unnoticed in the same time, because you can't have one of the operations start before the other, because then it will disclose to the others that the forces are there. So the first phase is the secretive approach to the destination. Then there is what we call the pa'al in Hebrew, which is action, the command that says go ahead. This command you are now in what we call the noisy phase. Now everybody knows that you are there. They know that you are an Israeli soldier. They know that you are shooting. They hear, the whole area wakes up. This is where the clock is ticking, because now it's on seconds. First of all, you have to get first to the hostages. You have to make sure that they don't succeed to kill the hostages. In 95, the last operation, I wasn't the commander, but the unit was trying to rescue an Israeli soldier taken by Jihad Islamic. His name was Nachshon Waxman in the West Bank. And Rabin gave the okay, but by the time our soldiers arrived to the Z, they succeeded to shoot down Nachshon Waxman. And one of our officers got killed also in this operation. So this is a question of seconds to get to your hostages, not hurt the hostages. This is where they have to be very quick in identifying who is who. I think maybe this was part of the decision this time to make it a daytime. It's easier in daytime in terms of identifying who is an enemy or not. But on the other hand, it's harder when you try to get out. So they had to really weigh the trade-off. And then they get there, kill the guard, get the hostages. The hostages, as you see in those films, were frightened. For them, it's not clear who is who in the beginning. Take them out and now start the third phase. And the third phase is the phase, how do you get out of this rat camp Exactly. And here, there are other elements that participate, other forces, not the Yamam, not the counter-terror force of the police, but forces like paratroopers, forces that their expertise is how to move in under fire with those vehicles. Of course, Air Force, forces that work with the Air Force to make sure that the area is isolated. There was a moment in this operation that one of the Hamas guys was standing with RPG trying to shoot the vehicle that was taking the 3 hostages, and they succeeded very quickly. How quickly the loop should be with a helicopter to take him down. So it's a question of second. An operation like this can fail in this moment. It can fail in every one of the stages. When you are noticed before, when you fail in the trying to take the hostages, and then when you escape out. This was not an easy. There was the problem with the car that got hit, and we need to have a substitute element. A very heavy operation, different levels of command in every stage of the operation, and this time it was successful.
If you can focus on one specific aspect of this operation, and that's the urban environment, how much it is a, let's say, obstacle for a smooth running of such an operation in this, it was obstacle for smooth running of this operation in this particular case?
I think this is the greatest complexity, and here we don't talk about a dense urban complex. Nuseirat refugee camp is a very dense urban complex, but we are talking also about the infrastructure of tunnels.